Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and we did just get amazing Metroid Prime 4 news, but it's not quite what you think. So last week a lot of things in regards to Metroid Prime happened. We got Nintendo teasing the art book, and a lot of different quotes have come out from the art book, which we will be breaking down for a later video, and now the art book is out and even more things are coming out from that, which again we'll be breaking down in a later video. But then also we got multiple rumors for a Metroid Prime 4 Direct to happen in the month of November, so next month. But then on top of that, there were two unlisted Nintendo Switch 2 holiday commercials about Metroid Prime 4 that technically were leaked because, yes, they are unlisted YouTube videos that you can access with a link, but they were not published. They were not intended to be released to the public. In other words, it's information that got out from a company that was not intended at this point in time. Technically, a leak. So we got that, and there was some new footage there on two different boss fights, one we had not seen before, one that we just got to see a little bit more animations for. And then there was also these new magazine scans coming from Nintendo Dream Magazine. And that's what we're coming back to for today's video. New translations, or rather apparently more correct translations, have come out, and they're shedding some more light on the situation. It does look like there were some errors or issues with the prior translation that came out from the initial Universal Nintendo article from last week. So in today's video, we're going to be clearing that up, but also diving further into these magazine scans, because there are some interesting things here that we did not see before that, well, I think are very interesting, such as imagery depicting what appears to be a massive ice cavern, and some interesting implications by what you might think is a little bit funny, but Lamorne feet. So that's what we're getting into today. And so getting into this whole topic on these translations, let me first just say that I do think I personally could have done a better job in expressing some caution with those initial translations. Quite frankly, when I saw these translations from Universal Nintendo, like pretty much every other outlet last week, I trusted Universal Nintendo's translations because 1, Universal Nintendo was considered to be a reputable outlet, and 2, Necrofelipe, the writer and owner of Universal Nintendo, said that they had multiple native Japanese speakers vet this information. So at the time, it was entirely trusted, but something that I think we should try to keep in mind moving forward is that when it comes to translations, we do need to try and take it with a grain of salt, because while it is 100% real information, sometimes that information can be misinterpreted. And in this scenario, at least based off some of the recent translations, it seems like there was a lot of misinterpretation for whatever reason. So, Shine Sparkers posted yesterday, new feature. After questions were raised regarding the Portuguese translation of Nintendo Dream's recent article about Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, we asked Darts enthusiasts to retranslate it and set the record straight on what it said. And then we also have Source Gaming here corroborating this by saying, we can back this translation up with its accuracy. We were also looking into the article earlier today, and this translation matches up with our work in progress 1. And I went ahead and also reached out to friend of the channel Kiwi Talks. For those who do not know who Kiwi Talks is, he has his own YouTube channel. He is known for interviewing a variety of different developers throughout the gaming industry, including many different developers who used to work for Retro Studios, and so he's known to be well connected. And I asked him his opinion on the matter, and from what he told me, the more recent translation from Shine Sparkers is the one to follow. And so we have multiple people who are backing the more recent translation that has come out almost a week later from Universal Nintendo. And something else to point out, Necrofelipe was challenged by several people last week, and he said this: nothing there is AI generated, and all the things was checked with Japanese native users. When you have something like this to say, try to have some proof at least. So that's what Necrofelipe was saying last week in regards to these challenges on his article regarding the Nintendo Dream magazine. Interestingly though, this article can no longer be found. Now I still have my video up from last week talking about these translations. I am going to keep it up, however, I will be adjusting the title and the description and the pinned comment so people can better understand that situation and listen through with that grain of salt in mind that the translations may be a bit off, because there are some very interesting things that have come from the translations about Metroid Prime 4. And to be clear, from the new translations, there are still many interesting things. A lot of things that we did talk about last week that are 100% totally valid and true, but there are other elements that we can't really find much evidence for, such as this mention of an Ace Raxus character that governs the depths and can either be your ally or your enemy depending on your own choices. There are some huge implications from this translation that we can't find much evidence for, so that isn't in the new translations from Shinesparkers. Neither is these several new abilities that are mentioned about the Viola motorcycle. There are abilities mentioned, but they are essentially the abilities we've already seen from the prior trailer. That said, though, there are still things that haven't translated from these magazine scans that are extremely interesting. So it is still said that you can use Viola in different vast landscapes. Viola can be used in a lot of different big areas, and it's strongly implied that it's beyond just the desert. It's also talked about how there are many vast landscapes, different environments to explore, like forests, deserts, snow regions, but also more. They talk about how there is this facility with different technology, as we see here from this screenshot, and this drone character here, which we've also seen from the key art, by the way. However, I will mention with this drone here, you see that it has like a calm blue light. In the screenshot, though, it has red. We've seen that in the trailer as well. So it seems like at the very least there is an offensive mode and a non-offensive mode, but this could speak to another concept that we'll come back to in a little bit. But it is also talked about how there are also ancient ruins, so that whole point about there being ancient ruins, still the case. There are ancient ruins. What exactly are they and how will we interact with them? I am unsure. We do see some pretty cool bit of architecture in the forest region from the Welcome to Veros trailer. We also see these different rundown structures in the desert as well. Some of these things could have to do with the ancient ruins, and perhaps there is still a depth here, because when we do take a look at the desert, these structures are covered in sand. There is an implication that there is more under the sand, so perhaps we will be able to explore this. It is also talked about how there are caves with flowing lava, so there are different structures to explore, there are different environments to explore a great deal. There is an overall message that the world of Metroid Prime 4 is super vast and greatly varied with much to explore, and Metroid Prime 4 being a first-person adventure game, that is the biggest, most exciting part to all of this, that we have a massive world to explore with varied environments that are extremely alien and exotic, and that is super cool. And something I will mention here that I have not discussed before, that I have not highlighted, I haven't seen too many people talking about this, but now upon closer inspection of these scans here, there is something that I'm noticing that I think is actually kind of a big deal, and that's this screenshot right here next to Samus. And as you see, it's another screenshot of the snow region. And I went back and made sure it was not shown in the trailer, and it's not. It's actually a new screenshot of the snow region, or of a snow region, perhaps not even the same snow region, although I'm going to assume it is still part of the snow region. But when I take a look at this picture, here's a greatly zoomed in version of the picture. What you will notice is that the sky is very dark. There is a lot of structures all around that are curving and are reaching high up. In some cases, it almost looks like it's touching the sky, like when we look here back into the distance or right in front of us. Also looking here, we can see some structures that are almost forming kind of like a circle, a very rough, non-perfect circle, but there is like a shining light here. This could possibly be a portal. We have seen evidence of there being portals in Metroid Prime 4. One, from the first few trailers, there are portals. We've seen that there's a portal that takes Samus to the forest area, or at least a part of it. And we've also seen a room from the back of the box art that appears to have a great deal of portals. So it may be the case in Metroid Prime 4 that there is a way to kind of quickly traverse to different areas through a portal room, and this portal right here could be a part of that. So this is stuff here I don't think anyone else has talked about, but something else that I'm kind of realizing here, looking at this environment, This almost looks like a vast ice cavern, like maybe the top is just really dark clouds, but when we look off into the distance, that's clearly the sun shining through there, through clouds. It's definitely obscured. And actually looking at the prior Prime 4 trailer, when we look at the snow region, the few shots we do get of the snow region, when you look at this screenshot here, there are actually some rock structures that are coming from the sky, almost like Samus is actually in a massive ice snow cavern. Also notice this part with the wolves, you can actually see some light coming from the side. This seems to be the same light coming from what we see of the sun far off into the distance. And I'll also point out, going back to this new screenshot here from the scan, a lot of the rocks we're seeing, or mountains, or whatever you want to call them, have a lot of curvature to them. And I've been speculating, I think most people likely agree with this theory here, that when we're in the desert and we see this rocky mountain that's curved, that is likely the snow region, especially because we've also seen that there are like zip lines in the snow region, and we've seen entering this area, approaching this mountainous region, there is a zip line, so it's likely all connected. But the mountain has curvature, very similar to these curved rocks we're seeing in what almost looks like a massive ice snow cavern. I just want to reiterate that it might not be a giant cavern, there may be an exposed sky and just a whole bunch of clouds. Although something I literally just noticed though, when we look at this screenshot here, we see that the zip line is actually aiming down, and you can see like a misty cloudiness at the bottom here. So it looks like what happens is that when you go to this area, you don't necessarily go into the mountains, but below the mountains, perhaps in this giant snow cavern. But regardless, I think this is a very cool region. It's nice to see another screenshot of this region here, and it just helps to further emphasize that beyond the desert, there are going to be vast areas to explore where you will be able to use Viola. Now, I understand some people are freaking out about this as classic Metroid or Metroid Prime 4 players because they don't want to have vast regions to explore, they don't want an open environment, but I just want to make it clear, we're not seeing evidence that this is an open world. We've actually seen evidence that there are limitations, like prior Metroid games where you have to obtain power-ups to find ways to progress. The fact that there are zip lines, the fact that we see a bridge breaking down. I have full confidence that that Metroid structure that Metroid fans have come to enjoy will still be in here, but there are going to be other elements as well to expand and evolve the series. But moving past that stuff, we've already talked about how there's this new render of this drone that we probably also saw in the key art. There is this new art of Silex, which we talked about last week, and there is this new art of this Lemorne character. A point that is also made during this section, as translated here from the Shine Sparkers article, foes stand in your way, but also allies. Samus will face space pirates and various creatures. Silex in particular is shaping up to be a major obstacle to her exploration. The Lemorne will entrust Samus with their wish, but what are their true intentions? So, the overall point that we did talk about last week on how there is this uncertainty about who is your foe, who is your ally, how there may be a gray area, how Silex may fall into this gray area, how the Lemorne may also fall into this gray area, and we're not quite sure who is an enemy, who is an ally. That point still stands with the most recent translations. That is still a big part of the messaging here, and that makes things interesting. I'll even go back to this depiction of this drone that has this calm blue light, but when we see it in battle as a red light. And I think this is interesting because you do see the drones do attack you. However, when we look at the key art of Metroid Prime 4, it almost looks like these drones, or whatever you want to call them, are lined up in a Lemorne environment, perhaps suggesting they are part of their own force. So if there are these Lemorne constructs or drones attacking you, maybe that can suggest that some Lemorne are not on your side. Which, by the way, I just want to point out, these things do kind of remind me of the constructs from Tears of the Kingdom, which in some cases are on your side, and in some cases are not on your side. So that still appears to be a big point going into Metroid Prime 4, not knowing who's your ally, who's your foe. But another point I want to get to here, last week from the initial translations that now many are challenging, there was a description for this Lemorne character saying that it's a female Lemorne that's a scientist that studies spirituality of the world. There's been no mention of that from these recent translations, so we don't know if this Lemorne is a scientist, if this Lemorne does study spirituality of the world, or if they're even female. That is all still up for debate. But something I do want to point out here, this is a depiction of a living Lemorne in physical form. When we go back to the Lemorne we've seen, they are almost like in a ghostly-like state, if not literally just ghosts. And they're transparent, and they do not appear in a physical form like this. So there's definitely something going on here. It may be the case that all Lemorne look like this, and this isn't necessarily a female Lemorne. They may all just kind of have this sort of style and design. It's hard to say, but something that I do think is a very big deal that we haven't really talked that much about is the fact that since we are seeing this new art that we had never seen before last week, this is a time where we're seeing a living alien species that at least at first seems like they are meant to help guide Samus but are also asking for her help. This is a rare occasion because usually they're dead or something has happened or most of them are dead, and that still may be the case, but it is a rarity to see a living, intelligent alien species that you can actually have conversations with. But something else I literally just noticed that I think is really interesting. Look at the feet. Stick with me here. The feet are very simple. They have two little spiky toes, right? Let's go back to this drone character. What do they have? Two little spiky toes. So, I think that is a connection to the Lemorne here. If there was ever any doubt that these drones are a part of the forces created by the Lemorne, when we look at the feet design, I think the indication here is that the Lemorne created this technology to somewhat match their own forms. Now, obviously, they are different, but I think that is a intentional connection there. So, yes, this technology likely made by the Lemorne, and we are seeing that there are times where these bots are attacking us. So the whole overall point that the Lemorne may not always be on our side is very much being clearly depicted here. There is still an absolute possibility that the Lemorne are the bad guys and Silex is somehow the good guy. I'm not sure if Silex is actually the good guy, but I do think there's a strong possibility that Silex isn't all bad either. I think there is a gray area here. And so there's still actually a lot of really interesting stuff we can take away from these magazine scans, but most who are translating these scans are challenging these scans we got from last week from Universe and Nintendo. Some parts of that are totally true from what we're seeing here, but there are other parts that we should probably take a step back and consider that these parts may not actually be in the game. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.